Philosophers talk to our times. The anthropologists have their say. Do you have a book that you never liked at the time but felt it was your duty to read? And then you felt in the years that have gone since its writing that you live in the ruins of its argument, as the points that it made have gradually unravelled? Well, I do anyway. That book is Gellner's book, Reason, Postmodernism and Religion. It was a book written in 1992, so during the First Gulf War. So long ago now. And he tries to understand modernity as existing between three poles. The pole of reason, where everything would be reduced to more and more rules, to bureaucracies, to reasoned thinking. This would reflect then the scientific explanation of the world. The second pole, Gellner suggests, is postmodernism. Now, by postmodernism, he is kind of thinking of relativism, that everybody could be right in their own cultures if only you worked out how to tolerate them properly. That the world was therefore multipolar, but multipolar with relativism, so none of them were actually right, running between them. A doctrine he sees as some sort of post-colonial apology, which arguably it is. And the third pole, which was Islam. Gellner spends his life rather perceptively trying to understand why Islam, alone of the great faiths, appears to have survived into the age of reason. What was it about Islam, he said, that allowed you to be scientific and still be Islamic? In a way, all the philosophers and the great scientists of the West had long since abandoned their faith. His answer is very interesting. He says Islam is unique in the great faiths of the book. You don't have to be born into it. Nor is it your redemption based on an irascible God who performs one miracle by murdering his son. There is no miracle in Islam. It is rather a religion of the book, faithfully following a set of rules, where each believer is alone before their creator. And that loneliness, that tension, creates then a power to understand the world as a rules-based system that both reflects and differentiates from the West and its world of reason. In this, Gellner was totally trying to understand, no doubt, why Islam was and still is one of the great religions to resist the West. The liberation fighters in America, I'm thinking of Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali and Sinead O'Connor, end up converting to Islam for a reason. It presents them a cogent alternative in a world of science to the belief in naked reason alone. A position, of course, the West, Gellner says, will find uncomfortable, and increasingly so. So there is then, for Gellner, a threefold a keystone to the modern world as he understood it. And, of course, we live in the ruin of that world. One of the things you get from Gellner as you reread him after all these years is his acceptance and faith in colonialism that he kind of confuses with reason. In another book, he will say that actually colonialism as a reasoned system of government isn't at all bad, as long as it is done fairly and justly. And that plus some sort of constitutional monarchy to handle the myth of the state is a reasonable system to understand what the new world would look like. I mean, the post-communist world. We all need to be colonized now. That basic idea was, of course, destroyed by one of his three tenets, postmodernity. We absolutely wouldn't accept it. We couldn't accept it, aware as we are of the blood and fire that was the colonial period and the destruction and death that has followed from it. The argument now, then, is very uncomfortable, and yet it informs so many of the decisions that were made. You see, 92, being hard-baked into that world was a new world order that kind of assumed that colonialism by itself was not bad. And why that then matters is that Yes, a few days ago, I was having a conversation about why the people in charge, people in France like Macron, are so bad at governing. What is it? Is it that they've got a hidden agenda? And I think the answer is no. I think the answer, in a strange way, is given in the ruin of Gellner's argument. You see, there is an assumption of superiority amongst the wealthy. Rochefoucauld says you'll never persuade the fortunate somehow that their fortune isn't based on merit. And that assumption blinds them, blinkers them entirely to the idiocy of their language. They accept then the Gellner argument that reason is king, be it in the marketplace or in science, and they assume that they are therefore the apostles of reason. And why should they doubt it? This doctrine supports them, makes them wealthy, gives them more money, gives them more power, gives them more influence. They've got no interest in thinking otherwise. And so corporations are run by corporate types who make sets of decisions that they all decide together. If you ever talk to a stockbroker, they tend to give you the same advice. Why? Because it is the collective advice. It is the collective wisdom. It is the collective reason. Yes, it is safe, but more than that, it is that advice that secures their power. And Gellner's blindness to this, his blindness in this book to decolonization and to one of the strong arguments of postmodernism, is not only uncomfortable, but we live in the consequence of it. Likewise, Gellner in this book assumes something about religion that is very interesting, because yes, it did feel true in 1992, and now less so. That was the idea that reason was that religion, apart from Islam, was necessarily on the retreat, that there was no coming back, that somehow the Enlightenment challenged it in a way it could not counter. But of course, Gellner actually presents, by talking about religions of the book and rule-based systems, a way for any fundamentalist religion to come back. Christianity has reinvented itself as the mirror of Islam. Oh, it's never as good, I'm going to be honest with you, because it lacks the central fact that to follow it, you actually have to be a good person. It keeps in the fact that all you have to do is confess that Jesus is Messiah and you are necessarily saved. A move that isn't quite true for Islam, as Gellner has it. But the basic idea of trad lives and following a set of rules, at least everybody else following a set of rules, reformed a fundamentalist Christianity that was able to survive, if fragmented, and possibly ruined, into modernity. Likewise, Gellner mistakes the link between nationalism and religion. And therefore, these days, you would have to include Hinduism as one of the great survival religions. Hinduism, of course, is a religion that you have to be born into, by and large. It doesn't apostolize. But when a quarter of the world's population are born into it, and it is linked to a nation, its approach to understanding the world clearly matters to us. So, Gellner's threefold division has already become a lot more complicated, a lot more shifting. More than that, the West's inability to accept the pole of Islam has become one of the begetting hatreds of our world. For the West, of course, cannot leave it. It needs to always demonize, always push Islam further and further to the extreme. And if you push a religion to the extreme, it gets more fundamental, more violent, more difficult. The reasoned religion that is the core of Islam that Gellner lovingly relates has become very far from the image of Daesh and the Islamic State, from those who, in their militant hatred for the West, mirror its colonial policies. We live then in the ruins of the self-confidence of Gellner, a self-confidence that he thought was nuanced, complicated, that one side by itself would not win. But the very failure of one side to win created us a world where the confidence, the unity of those pillars have collapsed. and we are left wondering what the fudge to do now.